let's discuss the latest on the conflicts between Washington and Tehran with Ross Harrison, who is a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute and author of the book Decoding Iran's Foreign Policy. Ross, good to have you on the programme. China isn't playing ball with America. Where could the US turn next to create this so-called economic D-Day?
Well, I think the economic D-Day that Trump is talking about is looking at the effect of U.S. sanctions and possible secondary sanctions that could be leveled at countries that do business with it. You mentioned China. I think that there's a bit of hyperbole here, Frankie, in the sense that the Iranians have been in economic D-Day in many ways for the last number of years, particularly since maximum pressure sanctions were tried and imposed after 2018, after the U.S. walked away from the Iran nuclear deal. So I think the D-Day is language he's using because the military campaign failed to create the kind of conditions on the ground that would get the Iranians to capitulate. So I think he's using that language in order to transfer military language to economic language. But in terms of actually creating the kind of outcome that he plans or hopes for, I'm quite skeptical.
Trump also vowing that any country that allows its financial institutions, businesses, airports or government entities to provide any kind of lifeline to Iran will itself face tremendous, a word he uses a lot, economic consequences. Is it realistic for Washington to be able to police this?
Well, listen, the Treasury Department has the ability to police it. I think the biggest lifeline that could be given to Iran would come from China. And the question is not really the policing. The question is whether the United States is willing to pay the price of derailing U.S.-Sino relations now, when China also has levers of power that they could inflict upon the United States, and because there's a looming summit between President Xi and Donald Trump in Washington next month. So it's not a matter of policing. I think it's a matter of whether the U.S. is willing to go to the mat and pay the price of disrupting a relationship that Donald Trump seems to be leaning on right now. That would be that's the biggest source of leverage or economic leverage or economic benefit for Iran.
I also want to focus on the Strait of Hormuz. It's a clear sticking point in this conflict. A number of reports in recent days stating the US military has quietly established this southern shipping corridor to transport what it says millions of barrels of oil each day, protected by American fighter jets with transponders off, so no one can track these ships. Now, this is a number of reports that we're hearing. Now, if this is the case, and we do hear that Donald Trump is constantly saying the Strait is open, is this a sign that Tehran could be relaxing its grip on the waterway?
I don't think it's a matter of relaxing its grip. Remember, Frankie, that before the war, before February 28th, you had somewhere between 130 and 140 ships a day traversing the Strait of Hormuz. So right now, what Donald Trump is talking about victories, maybe 7 or 8. And it's quite uneven. Some days, because of Iranian threats or actually Iran carrying out threats, that number actually plummets. So there is some flow, and there is an attempt by Washington to circumvent Iran's stranglehold on the Strait of Hormuz. But until there's some kind of a settlement, the Strait is not going to resume the status quo ante, the flow that existed before the war. That requires some kind of a settlement. The U.S. does not have the ability to do that because, remember, we're looking at commercial interests and insurance costs and insurance permits and so forth. So until this conflict becomes settled in some way, the free flow of oil and the Strait of Hormuz will not be fully open until that time.
We hear these constant daily statements, big threats from Donald Trump. But when we look at the leadership in Tehran, it is difficult to get a sense of what is going on. Do we know where Iran stands when it comes to an escalation in military action, or whether there is still division in the leadership? What's the latest that you're hearing or your analysis?
Yeah, Frankie, it's a great question. There are divisions. There are the principalists that are we call them sort of hardcore members of the Iranian regime, and we have more pragmatic elements. But we can't really, I think what we have seen is the management of those different voices has been quite disciplined during this war. After the war, we might see some of those divisions come to the surface and actually be meaningful. But we hear the voices out there, but it seems like for right now, the Iranians are quite cohesive in terms of their ability to make decisions. And I think for them, they're among the principalists and the pragmatists. What is important is that this be the last war they fight. And if that means that they need to inflict more damage on the Gulf Arab states and on American interests in the region in order to bring this to a head, which is a very risky proposition for them. If they need to do that, I think there will be unanimity on doing that in order to bring this war to an end, because it seems to be, languishing at a low level, and it doesn't benefit the Iranians, and it certainly doesn't benefit the world economy either.
Okay, Ross Harrison, Senior Fellow at the Middle East Institute and author of the book Decoding Iran's Foreign Policy. Thank you for your time here on Al Jazeera.
Thank you, Frankie.